feels good to beat y'all. That beat y'all.
Thank you for tuning in to Beats Per Minute podcast, where hip hop, health, and matters of the heart are in sync. I am your host, Miss Thurzday. And on today's episode, I am chilling live at the virtual barbecue with my brother, fellow Trenton, New Jersey native, member of the legendary Poor Righteous Teachers, creator of the Put It In There barbecue seasoning and sauce. Culture Freedom is in the house, y'all.
What's up, my people? Peace and blessings. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And also joining in the conversation is my VA brother, writer for rockthebells.com, host of the foundation on the YouTube, hip hop historian, and original member of the Two Def crew, Quan.
Peace. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Peace.
No
Peace,
problem.
peace.
What's going on, fellas? How are y'all?
It's all good, man. Just taking it all in.
Yeah.
Yes. Everything is good. Everything is good. One day at a time.
Yeah. Oh, I want to thank you guys for just being with me today. I want to welcome you to Beats Per Minute podcast, first off. And just really want to tell you how grateful and thankful I am that you, decided to join me today, that you're giving up your time just to, have this conversation with me. Chuck D talks a lot about consuming. And I thought that it would be a great idea to talk with you both about not just what we consume, as far as music, as far as what we see, but also what we eat. Because that plays such a big part in the Black community. We're in the spring season. It's the time of year where we start having our barbecues and cookouts and whatnot. And, that always to me was just, it makes me miss being home, being with family, being with friends, seeing the kids play, seeing people playing spades and all that. So I'm looking forward to doing those things. But in the midst of it, we are getting older and we have to watch what we eat and all that fun stuff. And so trying to figure that all out. So before we really dig into it, I'm going to start with Culture. Culture, people know you from PRT, as we like to call it, from home, but the Poor Righteous Teachers. You also have created some dynamic, music through your solo projects, some fantastic collabs with the late, great Nef 150. And they may not know that you not only, cook up stuff in the lab, but you also be doing some burning in the kitchen, as the hip hop chef. Talk to people how you made that transition. And I know we've talked, in the past about, what kind of got you into cooking, but just share with the people, how you made that transition.
Well, first off, I gained my love for cooking from my mother, who was just an awesome cook herself. Like most of us, we grew up eating at home. I mean, we didn't always go out to eat to different restaurants, and we wasn't allowed to consume a lot of fast food and things like that. So our kitchen was our medicine cabinet, so to speak. And that's how we grew. That's how we developed our palate. But we knew what to eat, what not to eat from home. It was commonplace for us to go over each other's house, and mom would be cooking something in the kitchen. And one of the first things you encountered when you walked in was the fragrance of, a home cooked meal or something like that. So I learned my passion, my love for cooking from my mother. And, as some of you might not know, she passed at a very young age, and I was still a teenager when it happened. So one of the things was I tried to cook some of the favorite meals that she would cook for us, and it just went from there. The kitchen was the place that I felt most connected to her. So whenever I was in there doing my thing, cooking, and all of that, that's where I felt the strongest connection to her, because she was such an awesome cook. As time progressed between shows and things like that, I would get just a job at a local eatery or something like that to just develop my skills. I wanted to learn more. So I started to buy books and things like that and study them on different cuisine, different techniques, how to not only make the food taste good, but how to make it look good, different styles of cooking, things like that. And eventually I landed a gig at a place that was opening in our town called Kathmandu.
Mm-hmm.
And they brought me into there, and I kind of worked my way up and then worked my way out at the same time. As so many young people do, you learn, through, the hard way and the good way, so to speak, and one of the hard things I learned was, you can't get too big for your bridges, and I went on to work at some other hotels around and some other places, like I said, in between shows and stuff like that. Then I would cook for the group, Shy, Wise sometimes, different type of cookies and things like that. And, we always love to eat. Everybody in the group loved to eat. And we were all pescatarians, so that was a challenge as well, to cook something that was good, but also something that was healthy. When we met Shy, he didn't eat any meat at all, but me and Wise, we just wasn't eating any pork or anything like that. As young 5%ers, we dealt away with that, eating any pork or any swine or anything like that. And then through Shahid, we stopped eating, just meat, period. And just as it went on, that's basically how that happened, and it progressed that way.
Gotcha. Let me ask you, Jay, because as a writer, you really are one of the other people that I have just come to love reading what you write. You are so careful about telling the stories correctly and making sure that you're honoring the artists, and you bring a lot of class to your articles.
Thank you.
But you started out as an artist yourself, and
Yes.
you have become someone who has really made sure that the hip hop history is being documented. Can you talk about how you made that transition, or what even made you want to start making sure that you were documenting this culture?
Sure. I mean, that was it was really a part of me very early on. When the first rap records came out, that's when I began to develop an interest. First time I heard scratching and scratch mixing probably was 81, a record that Grandmaster Flash put out. And that made me, want to take that element on. And I always was a lover of music anyway. By the time I was like 8 or 9, I had a record collection. And as a kid, I was always curious. So I didn't just enjoy music. I wanted to know, how are they making it? And I would look at the record cover and see who engineered it. And by the time I was 10 or 11, I knew if a record had a certain name on it. I'm not even talking about rap records, like R&B stuff, Philly International, soul music. If I saw a certain name, I knew it would be good music. So I was documenting things in my head from the beginning, because I would buy every Right On magazine, anything that had to do with music, I would kind of consume it. And when I embraced being an MC and a DJ and later a producer, I had the appetite to know, how these things were done. And I also had an appetite to know the history, where does this come from? Where did it start? So it's funny, I used to write for the school newspaper when I was in middle school. And I would write the music charts, at the same time that I was rapping, because, the people who were doing it before, I felt like they would have some misspellings in the names and the stuff wouldn't be right. And I'm like, I want to do that. So that subsided a little bit, by the time my group got a chance to record, and we, had little regional regional hit records or whatever that subsided. But always, when the internet became popular in the mid '90s, I felt the internet would be the next thing. I would not say I thought it would be as big as it is now, but I thought it would be the next vehicle for us. And I knew at that point, I was like, when hip hop hits the internet, it's not going to be told properly. They're going to start with the most popular people, which were probably the people who sold the most records. They're going to forget the first generation. So very early on, I learned how to create websites and things of that nature. And I was on the internet very early talking about the first generation of Bronx MCs and Harlem and Queens and the boroughs, and then, the tri-states as well. And then, just after doing that for just 20 some years, some of the people I was writing about, they happened to see my writings. And then the people at Rock the Bells reached out, and so I write for Rock the Bells now. I continue to do, as you mentioned, my foundation website. But like I said, the desire to, growing up and hearing from my parents that, rock and roll was made by people that look like us. These different kinds of music was made by people that look like us. It was kind of hard to believe it back then, even though your parents are telling you. When you look at MTV and what you think as rock, it don't look like us.
Right.
And then the older I got, and I started, like watching Spike Lee's Mo Better Blues about how we lost jazz, and then looking and seeing, okay, rock was our thing, and I could see the same thing happening with hip hop, where we were losing the control over it, So I wanted to get my say in there to say, look, this is what it is. This is where it started. So that's really what the transition.
Mm-hmm. So, Culture, we both are away from our hometown, but, still have family there, friends there, still very connected. Do you feel like the generation coming up really even understands, like, when you guys were out, Suicide Boulevard, YZ, like, do you think that we have done enough to make sure that they even understand, like, our history and our piece of this hip hop culture, what Trenton has really put out? Because we definitely had our own sound, like, what you guys were doing, what DJ L and Plex and everybody was doing, like, that was not really heard anywhere else, especially with a lot of the chanting being included in the music. Do you feel like we're doing enough to make sure that Trenton, is claiming their stake in, the hip hop culture?
I believe that a lot more can be done. I believe that just through various resources like this internet show and just other things that people can learn a lot more. But I believe that Trenton has definitely made an impact. I think they kind of lump Jersey in all together, because Trenton, we tend to have just like a major city mindset. You know what I mean? We don't think of ourselves as just a city within inside of a state. We're like a state itself. That was just the mentality. But definitely, I think with brothers like Tony D, and I don't think Tony D get enough credit, for the production that he did in that area, working with like Suicide, Us, Boulevard, Mossy, Too Cool Posse, YZ, so many others that went out and made a mark. YZ was a part of that thing, even though he wasn't from Trenton. The production came from in and around that area. I just think that like the brother was saying, I don't think there was too much documentation taking place. We was just doing it. I don't think we didn't have that writer, like, to say, okay, man, this is fantastic. This is what's taking place. This is awesome. We knew it was something great happening. We just didn't realize at the time how great it was going to be. I don't think a lot of people knew. I mean, because right now they're still getting together the hip hop museum in the Bronx, in New York. I mean, which probably should have been in effect, So we were recently inducted into the National Hip Hop Museum in Washington, D.C. last year. So, you know, people seeing that and they're learning a lot more about the history. But let me not even move any further without acknowledging DJ Ready Red, which happens to be your older brother, and the impact that he had on the city. We can't forget that. And the fact that he was one of the first to move out, him and the rest of the Ghetto Boys, when they moved to Texas and was doing their thing. I think it's just that it was so much going on, like I said, that we didn't really know. I'm still gathering things now, you know, books, magazine clippings, and stuff like that, because it was just our culture.
Right.
When we was doing it. It was just something that we grew into and we just grew up around. And I don't think in the moment we really knew what was happening. You know, I think back to going to the skating rink and your brother DJ in there, and the impact that he had on me. Like, you know, that's where I heard a lot of the dope hip hop music when he was there playing every Saturday or Sunday, and how much of a landmark that was, and it should have been preserved, you know, for years to come. I just think nobody really understood like what was happening.
Right.
We know it was we were being a part of something dope, but I don't like the brother here. Maybe we should have had a writer like him who was around, you know, documenting everything and like, wow, this is dope. You know, but it wasn't too much of that, you know, but I believe that people do know, you know, because I meet folks on the internet all the time and say, oh man, you know, my dad told me about you and your group and other groups, and, you know, and they're playing the material. You know, this brother here, Quan, he just was ahead of his time. He was thinking ahead. Like he said, when the whole internet broke, he was already involved doing stuff like that. I reluctantly got on the internet, you know, because it was like, you know, I was all about analog, doing this and doing that, just even recording digitally. You know, people from my school, a lot of us was like, nah, we like the 2-inch tape. We're going to do this. No, we like the machines. We like filling the machines and all of that. We like, you know, using the drum machines. And now folks are making beats on the computers and all of that. It was just like something we heard about, but then one day we woke up and then just boom, it was here. So I think a lot of that music from that era, a lot of the things that was going on during that time, it's being rediscovered. You know, knowledge has been increased and the internet is part of that. So anything you want to know, you want to find out, you know, if you want to educate yourself on it, is there, you know, and it's like, I mean, sometimes it you know, I'm surprised, like, wow, we did what? We was doing what? You know, because we was just doing it. Like it, so it's just, it's surreal in a way, you know, when I think about it, because I was like, wow, you know, I was pretty fresh, you know, like using words like that, but you didn't think about it. You know, you didn't think about it, you know, like filming yourself, because it was just, it was just who you were. Everybody else was looking, like from Europe and around the world, they were looking at us like that. But we were just looking at like, yo, you know, what's going on? But now we know. Now we get, our parents didn't even know what was going on, you know, because the culture, it was like, oh, they're thugs, they're this, they're vandalizing the place with graffiti, you know. My art teacher was like, you know, this is a fad, this is not gonna last. And I'm like, you know, he lost me that day, you know, because I was like, I'm in art class and you telling me this, you know, I didn't want to hear it, but, you know, and I just think that I don't think anybody really knew the impact that it would have, because I just had this conversation with somebody yesterday and they was like, well, there's a lot of European historians when it comes to hip hop and all that. And how is that so? Do you think they're culture vultures and all that? And I was like, not necessarily. I said, because, you know, somebody has to document it. And you know, people are now starting to wake up to the opportunities that are there because of it, you know, and they're telling their stories. You know, I still really, we haven't documented our story yet, you know, so because a lot of people just didn't know. We just didn't know. But I believe that what we've done is there, and if they want to know, they can. You know what I mean? And like he said, right now, some of the kids in this generation, they're, you know, they're rediscovering, or they're just looking at maybe when they were young, you know, because life to them began when they were a child. It's not what happened before me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, we probably grew up listening to our parents' music,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then it became our music.
Mm-hmm.
And just like for my son, I played, you know, Public Enemy, Tribe Called Quest. I played all of these songs for him. He's only 24, but he know it because I played it in the car with him and him and my daughter as they were coming up. And it's just like, how do we know about, you know, the stylistics and all these other groups that we were sampling and listening to? Is because our parents turned them on to it. So I just think, you know, it's our job to keep our culture alive in some kind of way, you know, and somebody has to be. It's the joke that I tell when I get in the car and I put on a seatbelt. They're like, what are you putting your seatbelt on for? And I say, well, somebody got to be alive to tell what happened, right? So it's just that mind state. Somebody has to be watching. Somebody has to document it, because a lot of people just playing their role, playing their part, you know. So
yeah,
that's it took.
You definitely
Make a long story longer. That's
and
that's pretty much how I see it.
I really wanted to talk to both of y'all, because just from our previous conversations, you guys remind me of each other in a lot of ways, the way that y'all communicate and different things. And also something else that I found that y'all had in common is Rapper's Delight. So
Okay.
I thought it was funny. I was, trying to be a journalist, whatnot, and do my research and whatnot, watching older, interviews. And so, Quan, you have the on the foundation, you did a interview talking about the Rapper's Delight, first time you heard it, that whole story with you and your mom, which I thought was amazing, because you have not only y'all having the conversation about, the how you was able to get the record, or trying to get the record, but you also brought in some animation. And Culture, he has this whole thing that I'm hoping he's going to start back soon with. Is Chef Quan? Wait, what's the
You got Chef Chang,
yeah,
Francois, Larry from the Valley.
Yes, a few.
Yeah, there's a few characters.
But talk to the people about how important Rapper's Delight was, because I think sometimes we, like, that's a song you're gonna hear at the barbecue, and we just take for granted we hear it so much. But for people coming from that generation, and the first time you actually ever heard it, like, how important was that for us?
Well, that was the Big Bang. Now, when I say that, you keep in mind, I'm not a New Yorker, and that's me being a respected historian and respected by a lot of not only New Yorkers, but the Bronx crowd New York is hard anyway. It's a hard crowd to please. But the Bronx, they're very hard crowd to please, and I've been able to garner their respect, because they know that my curiosity comes from a genuine place. So when I talk about Rapper's Delight, a lot of Bronx cats and New Yorkers in general, they didn't like the record. Well, what I didn't know at the time, being a 9-year-old in Virginia, was that, I thought that was the first time something like that had been done. I had no idea. I'm not in New York. So the genius of that record, and the genius of Sylvia Robinson, who, despite her reputation as a business person, she had the wherewithal to hear this music on the street, hear her sons playing it, and say, hey, look, this can be marketed. And Bobby Robinson and some other early record label owners, independent record label owners, They said this can be marketed. And it was genius because they rapped off of Good Times by Chic, which had been a hit like 4 months earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So the genius of Rapper's Delight, see, in 1979, there were probably 20 rap records. A lot of people don't know that. Was a lot of, Lady B in Philly had a rap record.
Exactly.
Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five had a record. The Funky Four had a record. There was a lot of Fly By Night. Some of it was like almost like parodies, like people were really almost making fun of rap.
Mm-hmm.
There were 20 or so rap, and then you had, of course, King Tim III by the Fatback Band, which predates Rapper's Delight by a couple months. But the thing that was special about Rapper's Delight, despite what people think about, the Sugar Hill Gang and them not being, them being from Inglewood, New Jersey, a record like Super Rapping by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, technically a better record.
Mm-hmm.
The MCs are more skilled in what they did, and the guys in the Sugar Hill Gang will readily admit that. But there's a reason why my 20-year-old and my 27-year-old know every word to Rapper's Delight. And it's not just because I played it all the time. It was the more catchy record. So where Flash and the Furious are really passing the mic and as Mel said, making 5 MCs sound like one, they were rapping over a beat that was a little more unfamiliar to people. They rapped over 7 minutes of funk, which is a street Bronx break beat. Mm-hmm. But here in Virginia, we didn't. The funny thing, the group that made that record, the Whole Darn Family, they were from here in Richmond, Virginia. Mm. But we had never heard. That was an underground song that didn't blow up, turned to a breakbeat. So to be more succinct with answering your question, as far as the industry side of it, Rapper's Delight was the big bang. That was the thing. Even New Yorkers who didn't like them will say that made me want to rap, or that made me know that I could do it, because these guys went on the Soul Train, they went on to American Bandstand, and they did they did some pretty big things, and they followed up with Eighth Wonder and Apache and a couple songs that were respected enough and big enough where when our parents and Don Cornelius and everybody was saying it'll never last, it kept going and it morphed into what it morphed into. But that's a very important record because it's easy to say, well, if they didn't do it, somebody else would have done it. I don't really follow that line of thinking because many others tried to do it. Like I said, there were 20 records that year. And the one that caught on and really gave birth to the industry was Rapper's Delight, despite what people may think of the group. And I'm actually friends with Wonder Mike and Master T, to this day. I'm associates, friends with them. And even the band and some of the people at the label. Because I'm just, again, as a kid, I was very, and as you saw in the video, I wanted to know everything about this record. How are they doing it? I wanted to rap. The minute I heard, because I used to write poetry, like a lot of MCs, I used to be good at poetry. Mm-hmm. So when they're putting it to music, I'm like, okay, I can do that. I can do what they do. So it's one of the most important rap records ever, along with their label mates, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, when they did The Message 2 years later, probably the second most important rap record ever. Extremely important. And those guys are still, one of the biggest touring not first generation, but early rap groups. Those guys still do a lot of shows because that record has universal appeal.
Yeah. What about you, Culture? What does that song stand for you? Like, is that what kind of started it out for you? Like, okay, this might be something I might want to do.
Yeah, Rapper's Delight, like he said, was one of the first songs I heard on the radio being played like it was. I can remember the first time I heard it, where I was at in Trenton, what I was doing. And when we heard it over the radio, it's just like we just heard us, something that wasn't super polished up before it got on the radio. The funk, just the funky sound of the beat, mm-hmm. And his just first words, what you hear is not a test. I'm rapping to the beat, because usually when you heard that, you only heard it in the clubs. Mm-hmm. Like you had to be old enough to go to the Fever and all these other places that your uncles and your aunts was talking about to really see rapping or, to hear it because it was such an underground art form. But when Sugar Hill Gang came out, it was like the perfect blend. It wasn't too dirty or too clean, and just they were speaking in a language that I can both understand and accept. you know, at the time. So it was like, you know, the language they were using. You know, have you ever been over a friend's house to eat and the food just ain't no good? I mean, the macaroni soggy, the peas all mush, and the chicken tastes like blood. You know, so it was just funny. And
Yeah.
you know, it was just everything. I guess by now you could take a hunch and find that I am the baby of the bunch, but that's okay. I mean, it was just their camaraderie. You know, you can hear almost, and even if there wasn't like the best of friends, it just reminded you of you and your friends and your experience and talking from a place that, like I said, you can understand and accept and sing along with, you know, and you didn't have to have like a great singing voice to do it, because a lot of people wouldn't sing in front of other folks. They liked songs, but they wouldn't sing in front of other folks, but they would rap a song. You know, and I think that's the other thing that you could just, you know, just subconsciously, we just took to it, you know, and Rapper's Delight was one of those records. And like all the history he was talking about, like, you know, we didn't even know that, yeah, man, Hemp the Dimp, you know, the ladies pimp, you know,
right.
We didn't even know that that was Grandmaster Caz's lyrics.
That's right.
You know, that he borrowed those lyrics from Grandmaster Caz, you know.
That's right.
And my early rap name was Kazzy K, you know, after Grandmaster Caz, you know, because one of my friends named Ali, from the project I was living in, you know, I was doing a beatbox for them, and he gave me that name, Kazzy K. So before that was like my first rap name. And you know, it would we you know, we had underground mixtapes that we would get from 42nd Street or 125th in Lenox and Harlem. You know, so we was hearing a lot of stuff, underground tapes from block parties and stuff like that we would have and be listening to, with Curtis Blow on it, and the Furious Five, the Funky Four plus one more, and all of that. And then when Wild Style came out, I mean, we got a chance to actually see these artists, and they was like superstars to us. And then we got it, you know, we got a inside look on, you know, what the whole rap scene looked like, you know, up New York. But, you know, like you said, we had our own flavor. But the Sugar Hill Gang, I mean, they are part of the induction. Master G, you know, he's a part of the National Hip Hop Museum.
Yeah. Yes.
And you know, and so I mean, who would have thought? Who would have thunk it that, you know, I was rapping their songs as a kid, and then one day we would get inducted by somebody from that group. So, you know, like he said, I think some things are just meant to be. It just happens that way. I mean, the second group that had a huge impact on me was Run DMC. I don't think they get enough credit because they were looked upon as the same way as like the Sugar Hill Gang. You know, you always got those folks that be like, man, we the real thing, and that right there it's all right, but it's not really, you know, this, you know, and I think that's part of the reason Run DMC. But Run DMC also helped to take the art form all around the world and expose so many people. To me, they're the greatest rap group ever. You know what I mean? They don't get mentioned in that vein, and I know a lot of people would say a lot of the more modern groups, but without Run DMC as well, you know, taking it the way they did. I mean, you know, they declared when Run said no curls, no waves, PZ heads still get paid, you know, it was like, for all you sucker MCs perpetrating the fraud. Just my favorite all-time video is Rockbox. I mean, because to me, they were the introduction to the video. They brought hip hop to MTV. You know what I mean? You know, and Grandmaster Flash, the Furious Five with the message, that was just, when we heard that, like the subject matter, you know, like conscious rap, you know what I mean? To me, that was like, you know, just, it's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under. Broken glass everywhere. You know what I mean? Just the first words, like, to me, you know, is when just the first word, you know, just the first words that come out of your mouth, and you like broken glass.
For me,
You know
it was
what I mean?
crazy because, going back to my brother, DJ,
Yeah,
said, Flash was everything, and
yeah.
going back to that era, you know, he's told the story about how he was introduced to
Mm-hmm.
and everything from going up to New York visiting family, and so Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five is directly the responsibility of a DJ Ready Red than going to
Mm-hmm.
Ghetto Boys. But it was crazy because he used to play that song so much that it was like I would go to sleep to it.
Mm-hmm.
We grew up out West Trend on Edge
Mm-hmm.
Avenue. The first time I ever went to a projects, I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I'm walking in the hallway or going up the stairs, I was like, yo, like, how did they know what this place smells like?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, just hearing a song like The Message, it painted this picture that even growing up out West Side and never having that experience, when I did start getting older and seeing these things that Melly Mel was talking about in the song, I'm like, yo, like that's crazy. And even to the extent of just how this culture, we didn't maybe really think that it was going to go as far as Biggie said, and because you was even making a comment about how it was like, parodies, growing up in Trenton, being in between Philly and Newark and New York and everything. I primarily grew up listening to Power 99. So Lady B was like, big thing for me. Wake up every morning, you hearing the rap and Duke, you know what I mean? And so like even when Biggie did that song, it's like yeah, like I remember all this stuff. Like this is what we kind of did. So, it's just funny how we can now look back, and even with coming up with the idea for this topic, I called it, Live from the Barbecue because of the song.
Mm-hmm.
And that was our first introduction to who we would now know as Nas and what he has done in the industry. And now with Mass Appeal,
Yeah.
there's so many different areas that hip hop has allowed people to go into that is beyond just being an artist, but creating these communication media companies, going into IT, like so many different things, because I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of DJs and artists and like even going back to the B-boys and B-girls, and like it allowed them in spaces that made them think that they could do even more. And if
Yeah.
not for hip hop, maybe we would not see them in those spaces. So I think
Yeah.
that's one of the dopest things about hip hop.
Certainly. If I could, can I interject real quick?
Yeah.
I want to piggyback off something you said real quick. So I'm doing a documentary about The Message. That was a song that really affected me, and a lot of people don't notice. Some people do, but to the degree, like, so the other writer, only two people wrote on The Message. It was Duke Booty, aka Ed Fletcher, who died 2 years ago, and then of course Belly Man. But Fletcher was from, I believe, Elizabeth, Jersey. Duke Booty. I spent the last year of his life I spent with him doing Zoom calls. The pandemic was really heavy back then. I was doing a documentary on the Sugar Hill Band, which he was a part of. He played percussion on Apache and Eighth Wonder and all of those songs. So he wrote everything. A lot of people don't realize this. Everything on The Message he wrote except the last verse. A Child Is Born with No State of Mind. Mel had wrote that for Super Rapping, which came out 2 years before. But every other word is like a jungle, all of that. So the whole broken glass everywhere. He told me he was sitting in his mother's basement in Elizabeth. I'm pretty sure it was Elizabeth, New Jersey. And he said you could hear, a car ride by, you hear glass breaking or whatever. And that's what prompted him to write that. So one of the reasons that you may say, oh, he's talking about here. I don't know how far it is from Elizabeth to where you guys are.
But it's just the imagery was so real that
Mm-hmm.
no matter where you live, whether it was
Right.
Jersey,
Certainly.
wherever, like
Certainly.
you have had this experience in some form or not. And even to the degree, you know, the message to me was like the first conversation about mental health that we've ever had on record. You know what I mean? Because
What?
it's like literally like someone talking about trying to keep their self, you know what I mean?
Right.
While they're
Yeah,
going
he said,
through
sometime I think I'm going insane. I swear I might hijack a plane. You know, he's not playing around. So yeah. Yeah.
it's still like it's still relevant. I mean, it's like the beat, the lyrics, all of
Yeah,
it
everything.
still so
Everything.
relevant.
But
And this was the crazy thing, and I was very grateful that, you know, I had the chance to tell Mel after my brother passed, and also Raheem when he came for the workshop, that you know, the day that we got to Jersey and I went to my cousin's house to pick up my brother's truck, you know, my sister and my nephew and my daughter and my cousin are all talking, and I walk over to the truck, I turn it on, and that song just started blasting. And I just lost it. Like, you know, it was just a crazy moment, you know.
he was a huge fan of that group. As I told you before, I remember, I had a poster,
Yeah.
and that from on my wall. He wanted one. I found it and sent it to him. But we shared, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five stories because he was one of the only other people that was obsessed or influenced by that group as I was.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of our common links. Me and him had a lot of conversations, but we would talk about the greatness of that group. In fact, I remember telling me that his parents didn't necessarily love rap music, but when he brought that album home, the full album with the message and the other songs, because they had some songs where they were actually singing on it, it was actual R&B. That his parents were a little more accepting because like, okay, we can get with this.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a pivotal group in his coming up, just like mine. And he was definitely. We talked about that group a lot.
I'm sure. Yeah. And I now have that poster.
Dope.
Oh, dope. That's dope.
Do you have that
dope.
jean jacket your brother had?
Oh no, you talking about the leather jacket.
The leather jacket, yeah, the leather jacket.
No, that kind of, I think that got lost in you know, when he first moved to Texas. You know, he had it for a very long time, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, Red was like
across the street had made it for him.
Yeah, he was like the Grandmaster Flash to me. You know what I mean? Like the guy I knew, because he was one of the reasons why I went to the skating rink all the time. And I remember when he like did his whole farewell thing, when he stopped DJing there, and I was like, man, what is going to happen? Like, what is it going to sound like in here? I just remember how sad I was when he left. You know what I mean? Because he was such a staple in that place. And I heard all the dope stuff. Like Red would play all the stuff. I remember the battles he had with Ramsey, him cutting with handcuffs on, the whole 9 yards. I mean, you would be skating and you come by and you see Red up in there doing his thing. And he was like, he was big time. You know what I mean? He was like a celebrity to us, and I just remember the impact that Red, I would always be grateful to Red for, what he did there, because he helped bring the culture to Trenton. He was a very big part of the culture in Trenton. And, I was proud of him when he was leaving to kind of do his thing, but I was also sad at the same time because the music there never was the same, and he definitely made an impact. I mean, he had the coveted job in the city. I mean, to be the one to DJ every weekend at the Capitol Skating Ring was a big deal. And a lot of people was hating on Red low key, a lot of DJs, they might not admit it, but he had the job. I mean, because that was the place that, people were going to gather. And then I think the last hour of every Saturday night after we got finished skating, everybody would take off their skates and start dancing and break dancing. And, when he joined up with Johnny C and all of them, I mean, Rod D, I mean, it was just, it was phenomenal. And I was a part of the God Squad. So we was like rival groups.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Back then, we they were a part of our competition, and I was just doing the beatbox. But, when it was him, I believe it was him, Johnny C, and another brother named Rod D. I believe Rod D was like one of the coldest poppers like ever. Like, I don't even know where he at, but he was just like, you know, and they were a few years older than me, but I was like, man, you know, it was real dope, man. And Red definitely made his mark, and him and so many others. I mean, that was older than me and Wise that we kind of looked up to. Omar Superstar, General Lee, Diamond D. It was so many other rappers in the area that was just dope. And you know, I'm just, you know, grateful to even know Red, have known Red, or just to see him play, because he was, I mean, he was definitely dope, you know. And yeah, man, him, Smokey, the whole scene, you know, was just, once again, it's just when I think back on it, it's like, wow, you know, you didn't even realize what was happening at the time, but it was just, it was so dope, man. And Red is definitely, I mean, definitely Red's death story should definitely be told and never be forgotten.
I'm doing my best to, you know, kind of make sure that happens. And also, I think it's important because, like you were saying, you know, in Trenton during that time, you know, when he was DJing at the Capitol and then at the Boys Club, Lawrence parties,
Oh yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Um, and then he left, got to Texas, you know, ended up becoming part of the Ghetto Boys, reached back home, brought Johnny C down there, and then they're down there. And one of the first artists for Rap a Lot that was, you know, actually signed to a major label was Raheem the Vigilante, who's also from art, you know what I mean? So it was like,
Yeah.
Britain has a direct connection to Southern hip hop
Oh
through
yeah.
guys.
Oh yeah.
And it's just, I not sure how much people really truly understand that, you know, but it's for us as, you know, for our city, for us to make sure that that legacy is continued, because, you know, the people from Houston have been great. The way that they accepted, you know, all of those guys is amazing, but we also have to accept that, because I think that sometimes, from our hometown, if it wasn't done near, then it didn't happen. Almost,
Yeah.
it seems like.
Yeah.
And so that's important. And it's also kind of funny because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but you know, the whole roller skating thing is like making a big comeback right now.
Oh
It's
yeah.
back.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because we're kind of, you know, behind the scenes talking about making something happen for, you know, end of the summer, going back home and doing like something. So
Yeah. It's, you know, it's incredible just how, you know, as the brother said earlier, everything happened for a reason. And he was saying that when you're doing something, you don't know what, like, even with my group, yeah, I document everybody else's stuff, but you know, when we were doing stuff and, you know, making records, I wasn't documenting. We were having a good time. We were in high school.
Yeah.
I wanted to hear myself on the radio. That was my main goal. And I wasn't thinking about, you know, okay, let me record the fact that we're doing this right now, because we're actually living it and doing it. But as far as Red, I'll never forget. You know, the brother was talking about the first time he heard Run DMC, he knew where he was, who he's with. Same with me, but the first time I never heard the Ghetto Boys. I was in the record store and I saw the album. Never heard of them. Never heard of Rap a Lot. I would always buy music based on the cover and things about it. I was like, okay, this is probably pretty dope. I get it, take it home, and I hear Balls in My Word. You know, you got Scarface on top of an 808 beat. Never knowing I might meet this brother one day. And just, you know, as soon as the internet gets popular, he tells me, hey man, I'm ready for the Ghetto Boys. I come to your website all the time. He tells me a story about how at one point he was homeless. He used to go to the library. And he would go to the library every day and read my website. Wow. And that's how we started connecting. And I'm like, wow, man, you know, when I was in like the 11th grade, you know, I bought your record. I would have never known he was from New Jersey. I thought all those guys were from Houston. I bought Raheem Vigilante's record. I would have had no idea that those guys weren't from Pitbull. So that was absolutely mind blowing to me. It's, you know, it's a small world. The fact that I would, you know, develop a friendship with that brother, and even Poor Righteous Teacher. I remember the first time I saw the video for Rock This Funky Show. That was my introduction to PRT. Never would have thought that I would work for a museum or, you know, have a hand in inducting those brothers, or that be on any kind of, you know, it's crazy how things happen.
Yeah.
And it
Yep.
also shows how small our community is, because and why it's important to even have these conversations, because now we are documenting, you know.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that's dope. When I tell people that Red was from Trenton or whatever, they always, what? You know, it's like, you're just claiming stuff now. I'm like, no, I'm not, man. And the funny thing about it is that we eventually ended up touring with the Ghetto Boys. That's I mean, just like you said, stuff just happens. I don't like. I'm like, are we out on the road? It's like, who's out here, Red? And I'm like, wow, boom, like, how did this happen? You know, like when Wise battled Jay-Z, and then we ended up seeing them out on the road. Like we nobody was signed. You know, nobody had a deal, nobody was signed. But then eventually we meet back up, and like we have records out now, and it's like, yo, this is great. But you know, who would have knew? Who would have thunk it? Who would have dreamed it? You know, I was just talking to this guy, and I was like, man, I'm just grateful. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, I'm like, ego, whatever. I'm just grateful because I couldn't have wrote this out. And just meeting a brother like in Vermont, doing that in Wilmington, Vermont, man. I worked for a company where, a situation happened and the lady was from Vermont. I ended up getting let go by a company over some nonsense, right? And this is like only a second time I've told this story. And the company that the lady worked for, she lived in Vermont. So she would come up and give me this long story. So we went through this whole thing with her, and eventually we just parted ways. I parted ways with the company, right? So I'm going to tell you how God works. We end up getting inducted in Vermont, where the lady was from, and she raced sailboats. Okay, so we had the brunch stuff down on the dock, where her boat was probably somewhere out there. I'm like, man, wait a minute. I'm like, listen, maybe the lady knew the people from the museum or something like this. Stuff like this just don't happen like this. But God has a way of working stuff out. Yeah. You know what I mean? And people will say, well, why y'all didn't have the induction in New Jersey or have it over here? Well, I said, listen, these guys wanted to induct. You don't tell people what to do when they're honoring you. You don't be like, hey, do this, do that. Yeah. I mean, you're just grateful, right? That people appreciate your work and they want to, they want to acknowledge it. You know what I mean? But it was just so.
Why y'all didn't have it in New Jersey? Why didn't New Jersey induct y'all yet?
Yeah,
start there.
So that's a question to be, something to be, once again, I appreciate those who appreciate me, and I respect the fact that people took out their time out to just do something for us, because that's just what it is. But that story, I don't often tell that part of it, but that for me, that's just my own thing on how God works. You know what I mean? Because you just don't know. I mean, you just don't know. And I had met the brother Jeremy through another person, through Lakrita or Linus Roars.
Linus Roars, right.
And through Geechee Dan. She introduced me to Geechee Dan, and then Geechee introduced me to, Jeremy Beaver and everybody over there. And it was just, the chemistry was there, man. Just a great group of individuals, man. The whole team is awesome. They work well together, and it's a blessed thing, And it's just dope, man. It's a dope culture that we're a part of.
It really is. It definitely is.
And you mentioned Philly. I mean, all the artists from Philly. I mean, a lot of the records were pressed in Philly. And that's what people don't know. I mean, the culture started in New York, but a lot of the records that were being pressed was coming out of Philly, and
I tell people that all the time. A lot of the first Marley Marl records was on Pop Art, and Pop Art was a Philly label. Craig G, Marley's first stuff, MC Shan, they were working out of Philly, and like I said, Jersey played a big role because despite what people think about Sugar Hill, that stuff was but from 79 to 84, that's where the majority, if you went to the store to get a rap record, you was getting it from them records was pressed up in Inglewood, you know? So it's
Exactly.
crazy.
Inglewood, definitely. Definitely. And like even like the project I grew up in, which was Dolly Home Project, which we called Divine Land. A lot of people don't know that Raza Don, who played the drums for Arrested Development, was from that same project. And his wife, who sung a Penny with a Hole in It, was from Trenton.
Wow.
So I mean, there was a lot of artists that came out of that area, which people don't know about. But New Jersey put out a lot of music, and it's good that somebody's documenting. Like I said, these stories are being told, and we gotta do more to make sure people understand the rich culture that we have.
Because it also brings pride,
Yeah.
For me, growing up in Trenton, and like I said, I was a, young teenager or whatever, and going out or whatever, hanging out with friends. It was like it really meant something hearing you guys and like I said, hearing Suicide and everybody, and it, it was like, wow, like this is, dope. Like, the music was, it wasn't like just, oh yeah, that's just them. But no, this was cool, we had some dope DJs coming from out of, Jersey, everything that Juice did. Juice,
Oh yeah.
I grew up when, when we moved to Center Street, by that point, it was getting close to the time when my brother was about to go to Texas. But I remember Juice coming to the house and, being one of the other ones, kind of learning from my brother how to spin and, and different stuff like that. So it's, it was just a sense of pride that it gave me. And, and I think that sometimes that if we don't talk about these things and allow for the younger generations to see what really came out of Trenton, Sarah Dash and Nona Hendrix, like these people that was part of the labels, that it wasn't just Patty. We had two Trenton natives in that, you know what I mean? That, and I think those things are important, and those are the things that kind of help the next generation realize, like, yo, like if he could do it, I could do it too,
Yeah, like Instant Funk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Instant Funk, Raymond Earl and all those guys. I got my mind made up. Come on. You can get it, girl.
That's my brother's joint.
Anytime. Yeah, I mean, Raymond Earl, we used to go down his basement and, he would educate us on how to record and stuff like that. And I actually recorded a couple songs down there in his basement. And he would, share with us. He'd just be looking at us laughing, I'm like, the hip hop generation is in, in his house doing stuff, like little knuckleheads, but he was working with us. So, Instant Funk and a lot of that stuff, man. I mean, and we did a lot of shows in Virginia in that area, DC area. I mean, DC with the Black Hole and all of that stuff, we performed there, and the whole go-go scene and all that stuff, and Howard University. I mean, we used to love going down that way. I mean, we got a lot of love from Virginia, and a lot of people from Trenton went to school in Virginia. Norfolk State and all
Virginia
that. My brother,
State.
my brother, my older brother is a graduate of Hampton University. So a lot of folks from Trenton. So we always had that connection. Trenton and Philly and the whole thing. Baltimore, right. Can't forget B-more, so and then the whole tri-state area, so that music was, getting around all over there.
Oh, it definitely was.
Yeah, so that's just super dope, man.
So
and go ahead.
As far as kind of taking it back to the food aspect of it, right? How do you think that, especially like for our generation, we're seeing hip hop is turning 50, so of course a lot of the artists are 50 and above, you know,
Yeah.
and Jaquan, we have talked about having to change our diets due to,
Mhm.
you know, things that come with older age. So how do you think that, you know, like within this community, we can have those type of conversations, or even just within the music, talking about, you know, being able to, like, you know, eat to live, you know, and
Hmm.
like you were talking about culture, that, that, you know, how food is medicine, and you
Hmm.
know, making sure that you know, we kind of get to back to that space of, you know, cooking at home. And I mean, like, you know, I've seen, you know, the stuff that you have shown on your social media is beautiful,
Hmm.
you know, but all of our plates don't look like that culture. So how can we get to that point, you know, so that we can get back to making sure that, you know, we're being mindful of what we're eating, and, you know, watching our cholesterol and all that fun stuff that we're now looking at. And, you
I
know,
think you know, KRS-One used to have a song about eating pork and beef and things like that. I think just, you know, us as a people in our culture, you know, coming out of the condition that we came out of with slavery and all those things, a lot of the things that we call soul food was basically us just making do with what we had, you know, from the scraps and things like that. I mean, you know, the things like chitlins, hog maws, souse, hog head cheese, you know, hog maws, and all these other things, pigs feed, collard greens. I mean, a lot of these things came from us just making do with what we had. And, you know, it also had things to do with living in food deserts, you know, or, you know, where we didn't have access to fresh vegetables and things of that nature. So I think, you know, we just have to insert it into the culture, right? And that's what we was doing in you know, the mid 80s, early 90s in the music, is we was having those discussions about, you know, eating properly and all of that. You must learn. I mean, just to make the title of the songs back then, and then you know, the 5% brought the whole thing in with the whole not eating pork, and then Chuck D, I mean, Public Enemy, um, you know, we just, you know, we have to start putting it back in the culture. We have to start expanding our minds, and the diversity in hip hop needs to change, you know, so we can have those kind of conversations, because it was about informing ourselves on, you know, good things to read, you know, good places to travel, things where, you know, we could prosper, you know, not just financially, but health wise as well. It was about just a well rounded type of you know, thing, you know, like when we could challenge each other on these topics too. Like when Run DMC said, I'm light skinned, I live in Queens, I love eating chicken and collard greens, you know, and KRS said a lot of people be talking and talking, trying to show how black people are walking. But I don't walk this way to portray or reinforce stereotypes of today. Like all my people eat chicken and watermelon, talk broken English and drug selling. You know, we could challenge that thought and that way of life without people getting offended, right? We could talk about those things. I just think that we have to meet people where they are on the internet. I mean, there's a lot of people on the internet now that's like the whole vegan thing and the pescatarian thing, and exploring ways to, you know, eat healthy, but making the food more delicious. And then you got people who are challenged the whole vegetarian thing and say, well, you know, I don't know if eating soy is good for you, or eating, tofu and all these things. But I just think the more we expose people through film, through music, through various art forms, through books, you know, and we get out here and we do like we're doing now, that people can be more educated on those things. I know for me, and I'm just speaking for myself, I really didn't have to deal with high blood pressure, you know, or diabetes and things like that. And just eating in moderation. You know, I have my sweets and things like that, But I think from cutting out a lot of red meat and things like that, it allowed me to stay healthy a lot longer. But like you said, along with age, it comes with other things.
Mhm.
And I just think like, if you already have these good eating habits, then you already, it'll help, but you have to train yourself. Like I said, my mother, she was a big on eating green vegetables and doing stuff like that. We had to eat a balanced meal, and if you didn't eat, then you didn't eat. That's it. It's like, listen, you're gonna clean your plate, you're gonna eat what I put in front of you. And I think there's some things that fundamentally as a culture we've gotten away from.
Yeah.
Right, because with more access, we have more access to different things, and now people are eating over here. Everybody's a foodie, so we started eating everything. We going out to different restaurants. There's a lot more money in our community, and but there's a lot more money leaving our community. But we'll save that for another conversation. But we're exploring a lot of different things, and I just think that exposure is key. Exposing our people to different things, and just better ways to eat.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to do with some of my dishes, is just refine them a little bit, because I know, like macaroni and cheese, we love macaroni and cheese, but just in moderation, in different ways to make it flavorful without just chucking it full of a bunch of cheese, or way to make greens. We love eating greens, we love eating cabbage and all that, but ways to flavor it to where we don't have to put a whole bunch of salt and things like that in it. So it's just introducing these different techniques and things that and that's what when we're starting our first food truck here. It will actually, this month we'll be launching our food trailer, and we're going to try to introduce some of those things to the public and to the culture, on just different things that we can eat, and try to, I use the term hip hop's top chef because food has always been a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
When you pulled up to watch 106 in Park, or you pulled up to watch BET or whatever, you was eating on something. You wasn't just sitting there. We had our favorite candy that we liked, eating a lot of us came up eating a lot of Narrators and Jolly Ranchers and,
Chico sticks.
little hub juices. I mean, but we didn't realize then, those dental bills was going to add up later on, Boston baked beans, lemon heads. I mean, but, we grew up eating all that and consuming all of that sugar, and, now we just have the chance, to just look back and say, okay, maybe, those 5-packs of Narrators wasn't cool, but it's a part of learning, it's just a part of that. So we just try to do better and try to do better by our children.
Yeah.
I raised my kids as pescatarian. My whole house was eating the same way. But now my daughter, she eats some chicken, a few other things. And my son is still holding 100% to the diet. But or should I say the way of life. And we just gotta get away from just one thing.
Right.
Because, KRS would say this, Slick Rick would say that, Chuck D would say this, LL Cool J would say that, and everybody had their own flavor, their own style, and everybody added to the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think we need to hear a full range of participants in the conversation, and we need to get away from this one voice that we've been hearing for so long. I think it's time we open the dialogue up to everyone again, right? And we got to take the culture back, and the only way to do it is for us to just keep having these conversations and keep showing the significance of it, because you had your Melly Mel, you had your Run DMC, you had your Sugar Hill Gang, you had your Grandmaster Caz back then. And then on our generation, you had so many different styles and lyrics, and people could just express themselves in different ways. And we need to get back to that so bad, so bad. That being different is cool.
Yeah.
Being different is cool. Everybody doing the same thing, looking the same way, and I always try to speak positive of our young people. you know, because I don't want it to be a us against them type of thing.
Right.
You know, but we do need to, you know, people need to be able to be free to express themselves. You know, our brothers in the South, we love their music. Outkast, you know, all these guys, man, they brought that's like our cousins from down South, you know, they bring a whole nother kind of flavor. You know, our brothers from the Midwest, they have a whole different, brothers from the West, up North, all over. You know, we need that diversity back in hip hop, man, because that's part of what made it so special.
Building on what the brother said, you got to make it cool again. You know, it's like, you know, anytime, you know, sometimes you gotta, I forgot exactly what the saying is, but you got to sneak the medicine to people, you know, and, you know, it's a very good example he used of the Beef song with KRS and the many songs that KRS and other, you know, the X-Plan and Poor Righteous Teachers, King's Son, you know, 5% was definitely, I mean, that, you know, the 5%, you know, me being introduced to 5% Brother 85 was the reason that, you know, by 90, I wasn't talking. I changed my whole thing around. But it had to be made cool, you know, and, you know, the MCs were already cool. And if enough, you know, if cats can say it's cool to drink cough syrup, even if you die from it, and you know, if that can be cool in the culture, or if it can be cool to not wear those shoestrings, or whatever we made cool, we gotta, especially for art, we gotta make it cool to, hey, look, you know, maybe we don't need to eat this many times a day, or eat this particular thing, or maybe everything should be in moderation, or as you talked about a couple weeks ago, you know, hey, 50 years old, let me go get my checkup. Let me follow up on this. We got to make it. It's got to be cool in the culture. We can make it cool, and then it catches on.
Yeah. Well, I am so grateful that you guys joined me today. I knew it was going to be a great conversation.
Certainly.
And, you know, and I'm so appreciative of you giving up your time and your talents and you know, culture. I am so excited to see what you guys are going to be doing with the food truck. You know, if let the people know how they can order products from you, and you know, and then Jay, if you could tell them as well what you got coming up.
If you want to order any of the barbecue sauce, or just go to www.cult-freecollection.com and you can order yours today, and you can get one of these hats as well. So just stop by, man, and check me out. Or you can go to HipHop'sTopChef on Instagram, or go to Culture Freedom PRT on Facebook. Any one of those things, look me up, man. We can make it happen.
And you can reach me on all social media at Quan. And you know, I write for Rock the Bells. You know, every day I got some kind of feature or news piece on rockthebells.com, and continue my work with the museum. So yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you again, fellas. This has truly been a great barbecue, as we have shared different, you know, conversations about so many different things. And, you know, and maybe we'll kind of see that again in hip hop as, you know, we keep growing. And, you know, it's been really like a awakening, I think, too, recently. So thank you guys for tuning in. You know, this, thank you for having us. And this is where, you know, hip hop, health, and matters of the heart are in sync. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, peace.
Hello, little sister. How are you? Very proud of you and your accomplishments. Love you. Take care.